Good evening, Scarlett and Deb, and definitely Michael, and everyone that is listening online or will listen to that online. It's good to be back, and this is the last session for this round of Be Your Own Therapist, which for me was a completely new thing. I spoke with Venerable Dundrup a while ago. He asked me to do those sessions, and I asked him what's the content, what do I need to do, and he said just kind of work it out as you go. And so I felt really unsure about it to begin with, but I really like this format. It still gives me a little bit of butterflies before each session, not knowing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I think that things have worked quite well so far. And so just as we've been doing it so far, we're going to start our session with doing a few minutes of meditation just to settle our mind. For those of us that see ourselves as Buddhists, it's good to correct our mind with refuge and bodhicitta. Correcting our mind with refuge is a way of ensuring that all our involvement within the next few minutes or an hour would be a Buddhist practice. And also when we combine it with bodhicitta, we turn it to be a practice of the Mahayana Dhamma, which means that whatever positive potential we create together, and if we dedicate it at the end for our own enlightenment, it would mean that the virtue will continue to spread on until we attain the state of Buddhahood, and also beyond that, when we'll work for the sake of others. And so I said quite a few words about it so far. So let's just sit quietly for a few minutes. First off, make sure that your posture is the right posture for you. One of the most important things is to keep the back upright, but not making it not holding it too rigid, too stiff. Feel that you're comfortable and take a few deep breaths in order to allow your body to become more rested, to support a mind that is more quiescent and spacious. So take a few deep breaths. And we will turn our attention to the breathing process and count a round of 21 breaths. And so we can observe different things as we're breathing in and breathing out. One thing that we can do is to make sure that each time we breathe out, we invite more relaxation and softness into our body, as our mind is becoming more clear and also still. And as we breathe in, we're going to retain that relaxation in our body and try to work deeper with our mental clarity and mental stability. So we're going to do it for 21 breaths. In the beginning of our session, you might remember that we've been speaking of death and impermanence in the last 3 or 4 sessions. So again, reminding ourselves that for the time that we have left in this life, we want to live a meaningful life, so that if we do approach the end of our life with a clear mind, we will feel happy and satisfied about the way that we lived our life. And of course, it's often difficult to feel happy about everything, but in case in general, we want to feel that we have done the best as we could to have a meaningful life, living in harmony with ourselves and with others. To die without any type of regret. And so to do so, for those of us who are Buddhists, we make sure that whatever we do is motivated by going for refuge to the Buddha as the teacher. Teachings that the Buddha gave through his enlightened mind, in which no afflictions, no anger, no attachment, no ignorance was present, with full comprehension of everything that exists, coarse or subtle. And also we have confidence in the community of teachers, unbroken lineage of teachers, dating back from now all the way to the time of the Buddha. So for us, there's Sangha. But also we think that ultimately, I want to develop my own mind, to become Buddha myself, to embody true paths and true cessation in my own mind, to lead others to the state of complete enlightenment or liberation, for the sake of all living beings that are just like me, having a Buddha nature. So we think to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. But the accumulations I gather through generosity and so forth may become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and Supreme Assembly. But the accumulations I gather through generosity and so forth may become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and Supreme Assembly. But the accumulations I gather through generosity and so forth may become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. All right. So our conversation evolved organically in the last few weeks. I think that I started off with looking at afflictive states of mind. I wanted to look at anger and attachment. And then we started to speak of death and impermanence as we were speaking of anger. One of the resources that I pulled out was, let's see if I can put it on the screen, was a list of definitions of disturbing emotions that is taken from a text on minds and mental factors. And we looked at anger. We said that anger is a malice, so the intention to harm, ill will towards sentient beings, suffering, and phenomena which are the sources of sufferings. So we looked at the definition of anger, and also I think that I drew from Shantideva's text in the 6th chapter, the chapter that teaches patience. Shantideva says, having found its fuel of mental unhappiness and in doing of what I do not wish for, and in the hindering of what I wish for, hatred develops and then destroys me. And so I think that part of a discussion was around the difference between being upset about something, being unhappy, being uncomfortable, being in pain, and then it being the fuel of anger, which is the intention to harm something, to harm sentient beings, to harm suffering or to harm the sources of suffering. And so I spoke about that, but I also wanted to read through some of the other verses. So it says, therefore, I should totally destroy the fuel of this enemy, which means what Shantideva here says is that rather than trying to just deal with anger or with hatred, he says, I should totally destroy the fuel of this enemy, which means mental unhappiness. So destroying mental unhappiness is a goal. And this is what I guess the teachings of the Buddha are dealing with, destroying mental unhappiness. So it's a long-term task. It is a mammoth task. And we have so many different methods for destroying mental unhappiness. But then it continues, Shantideva continues, it says, this enemy, mental unhappiness, has no other function than that of causing me harm. We can say that, of course, also with respect to anger. Anger is no other function than that of causing me harm, which is actually also, I think, an interesting point. I don't know if we spoke about it so far, but when anger arises in our mind, it gives us the appearance, we have that appearance as if anger is there to help us because it protects us from harm. And we think we have that idea that only if I get angry, I'll be able to change a situation that is wrong or that is unjust. So therefore, anger is protecting me. But I think that it's when we start to look at anger, to unpack anger, we first of all we can see how when anger arises, the physical sensation of anger is totally uncomfortable. Physically, anger is not a pleasant emotion. It is completely uncomfortable. When I get angry, I get irritated. I feel, first of all, that my body is buzzing with that kind of energy. I cannot stay still. But also often I feel that I just have to find an avenue for anger to erupt. Otherwise, it would be bottled in and then cause me pain. So either I have tightness in the chest or discomfort in my limbs, or kind of buzzing in my head. It seems as if I just need to find an avenue to lash out at something for it to be released. And so we can recognize how, first of all, anger is not pleasant physically, but of course we can identify how anger is definitely an unpleasant state of mind. It's not a happy state of mind. So this is easy to recognize. But with attachment, on the other hand, attachment has the appearance as if it's there to help us. If we do what attachment tells us to do, it would give us pleasure. It will make us happy. So in some sense, it's way more difficult to recognize the drawbacks of attachment than recognizing the drawbacks of anger. You can say that the drawbacks of anger are so visibly present in front of us. And only if we really turn our gaze to looking at the drawbacks of anger, we'll see them crystal clear. With attachment, it comes with this really nice packaging. I mean, I was just talking to some friends today in the morning. A friend of mine wanted to take a granddaughter to India. And she said that she was looking at those hotels at Rajasthan, some of the hotels at Rajasthan. She's been to Rajasthan before. And she said that some of the places that she stayed at before for, I guess, a few hundred rupees or a few thousand rupees now are like $1,500. And so we had a discussion. If we had all that humongous amount of money in the world, we would definitely be able to stay in those hotels. And so attachment has that idea that it will give us pleasure. There's no problem with that. It will definitely give us pleasure. So it's way more difficult to recognize. Anyway, so we spoke about it. We are still speaking of anger. So Shantideva says, then whatever befalls me, I shall not disturb my mental joy. Having been made unhappy, I shall not accomplish whatever I wish for, and my virtue will decline. And so this is a bold statement, I think, that Shantideva presents here, in that he says, whatever befalls me, I shall not disturb my mental joy. It's definitely easier said than done, but this is a long-term goal. And there are so many resources that we can pull on in order to at least diminish our mental dissatisfaction and remain with a quiescent state of mind. It's not necessarily that we need to kind of whatever befalls upon us, we need to be sitting down and gazing in space with a smile on our face. It's not that kind of not allowing our mental joy to decline, or not disturbing our mental joy. I think that often when something happens all of a sudden, we react to that with an utter sense of distress. Utter sense of distress, fear, confusion, and then this mental chatter continues on and on and on, and our mental anguish becomes greater and greater. And so when Shantideva says, whatever befalls upon me, I shall not disturb my mental joy, we can think about it in terms of, for example, contemporary events. We have conflicts going on in the world. Be myself having grown up in Israel, when we look at what's happening now between Israel and Palestine, how can you not be disturbed by this? So I think that when you think of I shall not disturb my mental joy, you have to think about it in a particular way, rather than thinking that there are always ways for us to take care of our mind, to make sure that we do not sink into utter sense of despair. When you see other people suffering, of course, you become affected by it. When you see other people going through terrible pain, your mind does get distressed about it. And particularly, I think that when you look at the reactions of some of our teachers, not only teachers, but I guess that other people with a well-developed mind, when they see a distressful situation, they do get affected by it. So there is an emotional response, but we want our emotional response not to go out of whack, so to speak, not to become too exaggerated. So we'll fall into a sense of despair. And so Shantideva says, with respect to that, it says, and this is, I think, one of the most famous verses from Shantideva's text. It says, why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So it's a simple truth, but very difficult practice. So why be unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? And so I've been thinking, for example, of the ongoing situation now in Israel. So I have friends and family that have been affected by it. Some friends have been relatives killed or what have you. And of course, across the border, there are also a lot of grief. But when I look at it from far away, I think that, well, there's not much I can do about it. I mean, let alone not being able to do much about it from far away. Even when you're in that situation, most people have no control over their life. The only control that they have is over their own mind. So Shantideva says, he says, why be unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So what I've been thinking about lately, not only in relation to what's going on in Israel, but in general, encountering different situations, thinking myself, really, it's just something I can do about the situation. It makes me unhappy, makes me sad, makes me distressed. Sometimes I cannot take it, I cannot even look at it. Is there anything that I can do about it? In so many cases, there's nothing that I can do about it. The only thing that I can do about it is to take care of my mind. And when I say to take care of my mind, me being a Buddhist monk, I think to myself, really, I can do, we speak in the Mahayana tradition, this tradition, about being of benefit to others. So I can be of short-term benefit to others, and that's great. I can give advice to others. I speak with friends and family members and all sorts of people here in Australia or overseas. I can give some help or at least listen to people, share my experience with other people. So definitely we can find some comfort when we rely upon each other. But then long term, I think that really what I can do in order for a situation to be remedied, I think that on a personal level, this is samsara. Samsara cannot be fixed. It can be improved, but it cannot be fixed. In any situation that we will find ourselves in any situation, there will be faults, there will be problems, And at the end also, of course, we will get sick, old, and die. And so we try often to make samsara a peaceful place, a perfect situation, but hey, we are not dealing with something that can be fixed. Anything that is controlled by anger, attachment, and ignorance is bound to fall apart at some point and create problems. And so when I think about it in relation to myself, I think really currently there's nothing that I can do about this situation, but it is very likely that I will find myself in a similar situation in this life and future lifetimes. Sometimes on the aggressor side and sometimes on the victim side. Sometimes in both sides, being both a victim and both an aggressor. This is how it works, isn't it? And so I think myself really, if I want to, at least for me as a Buddhist practitioner, I think myself, if I want to find a solution for that, then the only solution is to get out of samsara. That's the only long-term solution. And so not only that, also when I think of so many other people that have been affected by tragedies, war, conflicts, famine, natural calamities, and so forth, really the only way for all of us to move forward is for people to develop their mind and to live samsara. And so I think that also developing compassion to others, developing a sense of not just empathy, an active sense of compassion, thinking that I need to do something for the sake of others and therefore I need to become Buddha, is something that we can, there's something that we can do about the situation. And I've been noticing that as of late, as kind of people experience great grief, at least people that I'm close to, I think that when I shift my focus to, rather than kind of just sitting with a tight chest and kind of feeling awful about something, if I shift my focus to others and think that actually long-term solution for all of us would be to leave samsara, to completely get out of this cyclic process in which we again and again and again find ourselves suffering. There is something that I can do about it. It's a long-term goal, but there's something that I can do about it. So Shantideva says, why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? If there's something I can do it, why do I need to be unhappy about it? And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? And so the last two lines, what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? And so we experience different tragedies in life or discomfort, unpleasant situations, things that are not in our control. And we spoke, I think, in the last few sessions of dealing with sickness, dealing with pain, dealing with, I guess, a personal tragedy that cannot be fixed. And so Shantideva says here, what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So I think that we need to kind of think of the meaning of this verse, or at least two lines of this verse, and see if there's anything that we can change in our perspective in order to implement that. Because I think that in thinking that something happened and I cannot change it, and therefore I don't need to be worried about it because there's nothing that I can do about it, is quite simplistic. It's quite simplistic in that mental pain in our heart doesn't go away just in a kind of, just like flicking up and flicking down a switch. It's not like turning the light on and turning it off. No, there's something really bad happens. You lost a family member, you hear bad news, you either with relation to yourself or with relation to someone that is dear to your heart, pain is there. It's not that if you think that there's nothing that I can do about it, so why be unhappy, then unhappiness will go away. It reminds me that thinking again of death and impermanence, I heard his Holiness speaking about his senior teacher, Lingam Rinpoche. And he said it a few times, at least. I remember that when he was a few years ago at Sydney, we were sitting out in the park and he was giving a talk. And he spoke about getting the news of the passing away of the previous Lingam Rinpoche. And he said that it felt such a great sense of loss, as if this solid rock that he was leaning on was no longer there. So I thought that, first of all, it was quite interesting that we, in this tradition, we see His Holiness the Dalai Lama as completely enlightened Buddha. if his honest, the Dalai Lama is completely enlightened Buddha, then his mind is perfect, and therefore he doesn't feel suffering. But it did speak about the loss that he felt about the passing away of his teacher. And not only that, sometimes you see his honest, at least clips, live streams or what have you, of his honest meeting with people that experience great grief or great problems. And he's affected by that to the point in which sometimes it becomes theory. And so I think that when you think of what Shantideva says here, what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? It does not mean to say that we become vegetable-like person and don't react emotionally to a certain situation. Inevitably, we do become, we do feel pain. His honest says that it feels pain. But the pain is not a sense of despair and despondency in which we cannot do anything about it. His honest says, at least with respect to the passing away of his teacher, he said that he felt such a great sense of loss when his teacher died. And after a while, he started thinking that so long as the teachings of his teacher are still present in his mind, not only that, so long as he still continues to study and practice what his teacher told him, his teacher will always be there. And therefore, I guess it's like turning a really sad situation, a situation of loss, to a situation in which you can empower yourself to even do better. And so I have a friend here in Australia. Her husband passed away, I think 3 years ago, 3 years ago. And she's still grieving almost every day, dearly missing her husband. And of course, the sense of, and she's not a Buddhist practitioner, although I think that she's pretty interested in this tradition. But still, sometimes I feel that kind of this sense of dwelling again and again in one's pain and not being able to kind of really try to think about it in other ways is horrible. It brings about such mental pain and anguish. And so I don't know. I hope that when I experience such great loss or pain, I'll be able to lift myself up. It's easy to speak about a certain situation of loss when you don't experience it yourself firsthand. But when you find yourself in that situation, you really need to be strong enough to draw upon everything that you've done, or everything that you've studied, everything that you try to practice, and see whether you can use it so that you do not completely sink into an utter sense of despondency. How are we doing so far, by the way? Any questions or comments? All right. Scarlett or Deb, if there's anything that you want to ask or comment, you can always unmute yourself and just join in. And so let's go back to this. It says, what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So I thought of linking it up with the conversation that we had about impermanence. I think that often when we think of the grief that we feel in certain situations, not necessarily about people dying or passing away, but also just about separation from everything that we love and dear. It might be a person, it might be a relationship. You experience a difficult phase in your relationship. I think that it is often the case that we fall in love with someone, and after a few years we think that this is a person that makes me happy, and I want to spend the rest of my life with that person, and only if I spend the rest of my life with that person, I'd be able to be happy, as if the source of my happiness is in that person rather than in my own mind. And then after some time, after a few years or after a couple of decades, it's no longer exciting. And we start thinking that if only that person stayed the way that they are, I would still be happy, but it's not the same person. They've changed. And therefore, I don't like that person anymore. I don't love them anymore. And of course, those things happen. But I think that there is that the underlying assumption is for people to stay as they are without changing, and also for ourselves to stay as we are and also to not change. When we then think about impermanence in general, not just death, but impermanence in general, that expectation that things will stay as they are is totally unrealistic. And so we notice that someone is undergoing changes, physical changes, definitely. We grow old, older and older. I don't know if I said it here or I said it somewhere else, but I spent some time in China and Taiwan, and the amount of effort that people go into preserving their personal appearance in terms of cosmetic surgeries and creams and so forth is just staggering. Of course, people do it also here in Australia and elsewhere. But at least I stayed for a long time in Taiwan, and it seems that you'd meet people in the 60s or even 70s that have completely clear, tight skin as if they were in the 20s and 30s. They invest a lot of money into that. And if you ask them how old they are, it's like you've just killed a cat or just murdered a dog. They become completely shocked that you've dead asked them for their age. And so we have that expectation that we will not change, that others will not change, and this is a completely unrealistic expectation. Not only that, if something changes, also, it also breaks apart. It breaks apart. It becomes old. I'll just switch off my messages. I get messages on my computer, and they ring, and then my attention is completely drawn to those messages. I'm wondering what people say. Yes, I'm speaking to you. And so anyway, I have, for example, a mobile phone. In my last visit, last time I visited my family, my sister bought me the latest version of iPhone, and when she announced that she's going to get me the latest phone, I was totally elated. And I thought to myself, that's great, great camera, great screen. It was so fun to have the latest model. After a couple of weeks, all the excitement, all the novelty worn off. And now there's a new version of iPhone on the market, and I really want it. And so that's the nature with impermanent things. We don't think about it, that things grow old, they fall apart. We expect them to give us the same degree of happiness and satisfaction. And so we buy a new car. We buy anything else, and after some time, it is no longer exciting. Not only it is no longer exciting, it also, there's a pain and annoyance where you have to fix it, you have to spend money on it, you have to buy insurance, you have to pay for registration, and so on and so forth. So all the novelty completely wears off, and then problems arise. And so thinking of, we were speaking about dealing with problems, issues, again, reminding yourself again and again that this is one of the nature of our existence and the nature of samsara in general, impermanent nature. Not everything is impermanent, but the phenomena which are permanent. But in general, we can say that we and others, whatever we use, are impermanent, and therefore is minute by minute, second and second, time is passing by. Things are getting closer and closer to the point of disperse, breaking apart, and so forth. It's also, I think, an important point to think of in relation to becoming sick. Again, thinking of how do we use the reflection of impermanence when we get sick. When we get sick, particularly with something that is quite shocking, if you get a diagnosis of a terminal illness, cancer, or what have you, I think that most of us will react with distress, with despair. And part of it is in thinking that it will never happen to me. Maybe rationally we don't have any justification to thinking that it will never happen to me, but without it being stated, we do expect that nothing as such will ever happen to me. And so I wonder if it'd be, when I get in the future, if I get notified by the doctor there's something seriously wrong in my body, and it is likely that I have either 5 years to live or 2 years to live or just a few months to live, would I be able to face it with a recognition that recognition of impermanence, and not be completely shocked by something that's happening to me. But I did, when in recent years, when someone that was close to me passed away, or I had to be separated from something that was dear to me, I did try to bring up that reflection on impermanence and remind myself that it is not shocking, it is not surprising. It is the nature of our existence. Everything that comes together at the end will disperse, will break apart, will be separated, and so forth. So either it will happen when we die, or when other people die, or when things fall apart. But we can take it up even to a next level in thinking that if there will come a time in which I will have to be separated from the things that I like, things in my possession, it's better to do them. It's better to be separated from something when I still have control over it, not out of my control, but having a sense of control. And so there are certain things in my possession, for example, where I keep them in my possession and think that I might use that in the future. I have a jumper or two, which I wear maybe twice a year or 3 times a year. I think that I still need to hold on to that because maybe I will need it later on. If someone asks me for that jumper, I find it very difficult to give it away. I might use it in the future. And then sometimes we can think about things like that. It's better to give it when we have control over it. It's better to give it when it's still intact, when it can still be of use to others. I mean, often what happens to me with not only with clothes, but also with food, with cakes, candies, and so forth, chocolates, I hoard them. I keep them in my fridge or in my drawer, and I'm unable to share them with others because I really like it. And then the expiry date comes up, and not only I wasn't able to share it with others, I can no longer use it for myself. So it's better to give things up or to share it with others when we still can, rather than let a natural process go, kind of take its course, and at the end having to be separated from things unwillingly. Do you find it a little bit simplistic? And so I guess it's we started with speaking about anger, but here we're already stepping into the territory of attachment. And so a few weeks ago, we started to look at definitions of disturbing emotions. So we spoke a lot about anger, a lot of anger. Let's look at the definition of attachment. It says, it is a mental factor that perceives a contaminated thing to be attractive by way of its own entity, and thereupon seeks it. So it's quite wordy, this definition. It is a mental factor or a mental process that perceive a contaminated thing. Let's not look at the meaning of a contaminated thing at the moment. No, it's not important for the sake of not that important for the sake of this discussion. But it is perceiving something to be attractive by way of its own entity, and thereupon it seeks it. So to perceive something as being attractive by way of its own entity, it means that we ascribe qualities to a particular thing as being wonderful, pleasant, beautiful, and so forth, existing like that from its own side, inherently. Not in the way that my mind sees that, but wonderful qualities, incredible qualities exist in the object by its own entity, right from its very existence. It is wonderful, and its sole purpose is to make me happy. So, as if my happiness is within the object, not within the mind that experiences that object or that perceives that object. This definition is a little bit technical, so I wanted to turn to the way that Lama Tsongkhapa explains that in his Lama Rinpoche. So in the first volume of the translation of the Lama Rinpoche, the Great Exposition on the States of the Path of Enlightenment, Lama Tsongkhapa explains the way that afflictions arise when he explains the origins of suffering as part of the contemplation of the states of the path of a person from the medium scope. And he says attachment means noticing a pleasant or attractive external or internal object and desiring it. When attachment clings to its object and grows stronger, it is hard to tear yourself away from the object, just as it is difficult to remove oil which has soaked into a cloth. And so here Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't go completely technical about the definition of attachment, but he says you notice a pleasant or attractive external or internal thing, and you desire it. But you desire it, I think, as the text on Minds and Mental Factors says, you're desiring it in thinking that it is attractive by way of its own entity, in that inherently it is something that is attractive. And so attachment is said to be definitely a mind that superimposes positive qualities, or it exaggerates positive qualities. If something has a certain degree of positive qualities, let's say 50 degrees of positive qualities, attachment makes it seem to be like 100% wonderful, 100% enjoyable, 100% out there or in there to make me happy. And the sad thing is that I can read through such definitions or talk about them, but still attachment is acting in my mind, making me believe that something, that there are things out there that can make me happy. And it works particularly with things, there are things things on the markets, products that I come across, that I gaze on when I browse the internet or see an ad. And all of a sudden it seems to me as if only I got it, that new thing, it would make me happy. And I remind myself again and again that it is my mind playing tricks on me. But still, if I don't control that process, just as Lama Tsongkhapa says, it's like a drop of oil that is soaked into, sipped into a cloth, soaked into a cloth. It doesn't matter how much detergent you use, it's still there, and it's so hard to remove. It's so difficult to tear yourself away from the object. And so a mind superimposes those positive qualities, thinking that my happiness is out there in the object. Not only out there, also, Lama Tsongkhapa says it can also be in there. I think that external or internal object. Internal object could be, I guess, that also it could be even in relation to our own object, in relation to our own body. I think that you can say that our own body is internal object, in a sense that it's not an external object. It's not outside of my continuum. My body currently belongs to my continuum, and therefore it is an internal object. So being attached to my own body is in thinking, for example, that if only I exercise every day for a couple of hours and have 6 packs and a bunch of muscles, that would make me happy. If only I drop 5 or 10 kilos, I would be so attractive, and that would make me happy. And so we ascribe those good qualities onto an object. And by exaggerating, ascribing those good qualities onto an object, our mind is blocked by seeing the drawbacks of our attitude, or the drawbacks of the drawbacks of that object. And so often when meditation on reducing attachment are explained or described in Buddhist literature, I think that we deal often with sexual attraction, and sexual attraction, being attracted to the body of another person. And so, of course, those meditations are wonderful in a sense that they carry a lot of power, but it's not. We have to be creative in thinking of the drawbacks of other things that we become attached to. So often, when you look at, for example, Shantideva's explanation in his Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, particularly when you think of, for example, the 8th chapter in which he describes the perfection of absorption or meditative concentration, and he does it in a particular way. I think that there are 190 or 180 something verses in the 8th chapter, and half of the chapter is dedicated to creating all the circumstances for cultivating karma budding or shamatha meditation. And then the second part of the chapter is dedicated to the practice of equalizing and exchanging self with others. In the first part of the chapter, when Shantideva speaks of creating the conducive conditions for developing concentration, he speaks about reducing the hustle and bustle of the world, or getting rid of that external disturbance that we have to our meditation. But then he also says that you also need to increase the internal hustle and bustle, kind of the internal chatter. And really, what really disturbs our meditation on concentration is attachment. So, of course, there are other things that can disturb our meditation on karma abiding concentration, but it seems that, at least for me, when I start to look at the patterns of my mind, I sit in meditation, and at some point my mind becomes bored, and my mind becomes bored with meditation. The first thing that happens is attachment. My mind is starting to think of things that could inspire either physical pleasure, also mental pleasure. Definitely for me, it comes out of boredom. And so Shantideva describes in the first chapter, he says that when attachment arises, you need to look at, and the type of attachment that he discusses is sexual attachment, sexual attraction. Now, the way that he describes then the remedies for that is describing the drawbacks of a body of a woman. But then, we need to keep in mind that Shantideva was a monk, grew up in a monastery. Sexual attraction was what disturbed him in his meditation. So he prescribed a form of meditation for dealing with that, and he did it for a community of monks. Then we can be open-minded in our approach to that, and whatever might be a sexual affiliation, you can apply the same thing to whoever you're attracted to. If you're attracted to a man, or if you're attracted to a woman, just follow the same thing. I think with a bit of modification. I think that, for example, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that men in general, like me, we maybe suffer more from BO, body odor. So I don't think that Shantideva describes that in his Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, but if this is what you attach to a body of a man, you can add that into your reflection. Thinking of the disadvantages of the body of another person. But anyway, I wanted to mention that because often thinking of the drawbacks of the object is explained in Buddhist literature just as thinking of the drawbacks of another body, another human body. But we need to be more active, creative, thinking of more reasons, be more penetrating when we deal with other things that we are attached to. I mean, I'm attached to food. I'm attached to money. I'm attached to gadgets. I'm attached to my computer. There are different things that I'm attached to. I'm attached to going on holidays and so forth. So we do need to be more active in the way that we make our mind see the drawbacks of the objects that we are attached to. So, like, for example, I mean, this is quite simplistic, and maybe my mind is too simple for me to think about about those kind of things. But I started backpacking when I was in my early 20s. And I was backpacking through Central America and South America, and then I was doing a little bit in the US. Then I backpacked through Europe and did a lot in Asia. And there came a time where I just completely fed up with packing my stuff and moving to a new guest house, taking a local bus to a new town, unpacking my stuff, doing everything again and again and again. I mean, I'm totally over camping. Just I don't want to stay in tents anymore. I don't want to stay in sleeping bags anymore. But still, when I think of traveling, this kind of spur of excitement rises up in my mind. Going to a new place, exploring new things, eating new foods, meeting new people, and so forth. That excitement is still there, and my mind is completely blocked by thinking of how I'm totally tired, kind of, or you can say bored with going through the motions of the technicalities of taking a taxi from the airport to another place. And so I have to actively remind myself of the things that I dislike about traveling. Of course, there are things that I do like about traveling, but in my mind, whenever I think of going somewhere, there's that sense of excitement arises in my mind, as if pleasure is out there in traveling, and I cannot see all the laborious or technical or tiring, tedious facts about traveling around. Does it happen to you also? And so that's, for example, I think that's one example of being active, kind of reminding us of the drawbacks of cyclic existence. I remind myself also when I think that there is something new on the market, which I need to get, I have to get. I remind myself that I'm on the move. I don't have enough space in my suitcase. Things fall apart. I waste my money. It's not going to make me happy. Maybe it's going to be exciting for a few days. Maybe I'm going to use it once or twice, but then I will not use that anymore. So I have to do it again and again to remind me of the drawbacks of whatever I'm attached to in order to reduce that degree of superimposition. How are we doing so far? Michael, Deb, any comments?
You mentioned about computers. I mean, I grew up kind of a computer geek, and so I always was trying to buy the latest, greatest, and still I sometimes try to find myself doing the same thing with iPhones. And I kind of remember one time I told my ex-wife, I said, I'm going to buy this new. I'm colorblind, not completely, but mostly, right? And I said, I'm going to buy this new monitor. She said, why? She said, because it shows 3 million colors. She looked at me and said, Michael, you can see 6. Why do you need a monitor that shows 3 million? And I kind of like shrugged, pushed my tail between my legs, and walked off. And then I couldn't buy the new monitor because she was absolutely right.
Hey, Michael, have you tried those correcting glasses?
I have not, and those don't work for my kind of color blindness.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen some clips online about people that start to see colors for the first time in their life. Kind of, I wonder how would that experience be like. Anyway.
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing. They're actually designed as glasses to protect your eyes from lasers for surgeons and people in the operating room because they'll do a lot of laser surgery. And somebody was the guy who invented them had some in his car, and one of his friends who were out playing soccer and said, "Oh, I forgot my safety goggles," and he said, "Well, you just put these on." And the guy put them on and did not know he was colorblind.
Oh,
because if you don't know, if you're born that way, you don't necessarily know, right? And we said, "What did you do to me?" He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "What did you do?" He goes, "Everything looks different." And they found it out. And so the guy discovered that these glasses would help people see color completely by accident. But yeah, if you look online and the store and the videos of people who see color for the first time, it's just amazing.
Yeah. It's almost like, I wish I was colorblind to have that experience of seeing colors for the first time. Yeah. Cool. Anyway, I think that our time is up for today. I had some more stuff to say about attachment, but maybe I'll have a conversation with Dundrup, Venerable Dundrup, and say about future activities. I will leave it here for now, but I wanted to first of all thank you guys for coming along and making me think about those points. I felt a little bit like fish out of water in not having a particular topic, but I think that it's pretty good to do it like that every once in a while, or every so often, because then you can really think in a very active way how you're going to implement the Dhamma in your life. So thank you very much for that. And also the questions, the discussions that we have along the way were great. Let's finish off with dedicating our merit, our virtue. First of all, I want to dedicate it for all the people that are busy with that are contributing to the activities of Thupten Nobling. So we have now, I only know Venerable Dundrup, but I think that there is also there's probably a great team of people that are working behind the scenes and active in different ways in the activities of Thupten Nobling. So thank you very much, everyone. May you be able to continue to make the Dhamma available to many people all around the world. It's a wonderful platform for sharing the teaching. So thank you very much. May you be able to live long and continue to do that. And also, of course, we dedicate all the virtue that we've created together for the long life of our teachers, for the teachers that are the main teachers, leading you to Nobling. I think that maybe Geshe Sherab is one of them, Geshe Sopa and so forth. So may they have best of success and long life in whatever they do. And keeping in mind that we're all guided by great spiritual teachers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and also the late Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we're still in many ways guided by him. So may his reincarnation come back to us quickly, get fully trained and continue to lead us in wonderful ways. And of course, our end goal is to dedicate whatever virtue that we have created together in thinking, talking about this material for our own enlightenment. In thinking that only if we become fully enlightened Buddhas with a mind that is completely omniscient, that knows everything, we'd be able to say the right thing at the right time, directing people to find peace and security and happiness in their life, and also leading them away from pain, from suffering, from the cause of samsara, and leading them to happiness. And so may the precious body mind, not yet born and rise and grow, may that bone have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael, for facilitating that. And thank you, Dev, for coming along every time.
Thank you, Venerable. Appreciate it.